Welcome to Retail on the Go, where we explore the dynamic world of self-service commerce. Presented by Cantaloupe, helping the world buy it and go. This season, we're diving into micro markets, a growing segment of self-service retail and convenience services. Our hosts will chat with industry experts and operators about their micro market experiences and where they see the self-service industry heading. Let's get started with Retail on the Go.
Hi, welcome to Retail on the Go. We are your hosts. My name is Russ. We've got Max and Kylan here as well. We are all BDMs or business development managers for Cantaloupe, specifically in the mid-market. And Cantaloupe has started this Retail on the Go podcast to really break down and dive into micro markets and why they are becoming so prevalent in the industry, why we need to focus on them, and the innovative ways that people are implementing and utilizing micro markets. We're going to have 8 episodes this season across the next few months to dive into some very specific topics, whether that's around kegerator vending machines, specifically around cold brew coffee, nitro brew coffee, residential markets, gym markets, just a few of the different topics that we're going to dive into. But before we get started, I definitely want to introduce ourselves. I'm going to kick it over to my co-hosts Max and Kylan to introduce themselves. I'll introduce myself after that, and we'll get started.
Yeah, so I'm Max Chismar. I'm the BDM on the East Coast of the United States. Before joining Cantaloupe here a year and a half ago, I played football at the University of Penn State from 2017 to 2022. So that was a great time. And now that I've hung up the cleats for a little bit, I go ahead and dabble in fishing and hiking outdoors anytime I can. So, Kylan, kick it over to you.
Yeah, once again, my name's Kylan Wilborn. It's really nice to kind of get off and get going with you guys. Once again, I am the BDM for the Central of the United States mid-market. A little bit about myself. I studied at the University of Arizona. I'm also a former college football player like Max over there. So you got former college football players, taking on retail. In addition to that, I went to the University of Las Vegas to get my master's, and a little bit prior to Cantaloupe, I was dabbling in real estate as well as mortgages and stuff like that. But in my spare time, hitting the gym or I'm taking hikes with my dog. So I'm a real outdoorsy guy, and I'm located in Los Angeles, California.
Great. Thanks, Max. Kylan. My name is Russ Russell. I'm the BDM for the West Coast on the mid-market. I live in Bakersfield, California. Before that, I was from the greatest country in the world, the state of Texas. Moved out here for family. Went to Texas Christian University, TCU, go Frogs. I am the only one of your hosts that was not a previous Division I college football player, but that is okay. And yes, we're just bringing this to you. I grew up in Texas. Like I said, live in California now. I have a wife and a daughter. And I've kind of bounced around from a lot of different things, from the auto industry to the construction industry, software sales, and now here in hardware and software sales with Cantaloupe. So really excited just to dive in. There's lots of innovations in the retail space, specifically in the vending industry. Like we said, Max, Kylan, are there any specific examples of just really innovative ways that you've had an operator so far jumping into mid-markets? Maybe it's the first time they dabbled with micro markets. They haven't really jumped across the board as everybody else has. Is there anything that comes to mind right off the top of your head?
The biggest one for me is it's a small company actually in my hometown here in Pittsburgh. But one of the interesting things they had, they were very scared to get onto it. I'm sure like a lot of individuals are, we see across the country. But, the location was kind of forcing their hand to go into it. And one of the great things we did was we did a mock-up for them. And from that mock-up, they were able to present it to the location. We were there with them the whole time, making different changes to the mock-up so they could present it properly. And at the end of the day, their customer and them also were also very happy with that. So just being able to hold their hand through the mock-up, I mean, that was something they were never offered before. And that was something they said that made their experience very easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. I feel like go ahead, Gavin. Apologies.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say, just to kind of piggyback off that, I think it's a fear for a lot of operators whenever there's something new. Vending's been around for so long, markets are so brand new. I have one operator in Ohio that I can think of very similar to Max's story. Never I did a market. was always a traditional vending guy, but wanted to expand and try something new. We were able to provide him that mock-up. And I think it's more of kind of relief for the operator, letting them know that we're able to assist them with that and kind of get them something to present to a location like, hey, this is your office space now. This might be your break room, whatever the case is, but this is kind of what we can transform it to. Kind of something of a luxury item that I think a lot of locations appreciate, just kind of keeps guys more happy and keeps, morale high within the workplace, that you got a nice setup kind of just in your break room. But back to you, Russ.
Yeah, and I think that we all have operators that have 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 plus micro markets, and it's just second nature to them, and they're really transitioning their business from vending to micro markets. But Max, you said something that made me think of it. Every time I work with an operator and it's their first micro market, it usually is the same thing you said, where the location's saying, hey, we got to have a micro market or we're going to find somebody else. And you never want the situation to be where someone's getting pigeonholed and it's, I got to do a micro market or I'm going to lose the account. But unfortunately, that is kind of the nature of the business that I think we all see specifically with our mid-market operators. And I think like you hit the nail on the head, walking them through and being able to offer that support of take a picture, give you measurements. We'll create a 3D model, 3D rendering that you can provide as a sales tool to your location, just so they can actually see what it's going to look like and just walking them step by step. I wouldn't by any means say that we're the experts, but in the world that we live in, we are the quote unquote experts in micro markets. And like I said, those first time operators are always fun to work with just because they've never done it and we get to kind of help walk them through it. And then of course we have our guys that they've done markets for years and they've got 20, 30, 40, 50. And I still think that being able to provide those 3D renderings and models have really taken them to new heights as well as they look for new accounts, which has been kind of fun and interesting. Now, Max, what do you think is the hardest thing for a new operator when they've got that situation? Like, hey, we've got to have a micro market or we're going to go with another operator. Where's the best place for those guys to start?
The best place is just calling, whether it's me, you, or Kylan, just giving us so we can go ahead and guide you through it, because it's the rendering process is as easy as it sounds. You just take a picture and you send it to one of the three of us, and we're going to go ahead and take care of it. We're going to start going behind the scenes, modeling it up based off of what you and your client need to be done. So whether it's heavy on the drink side or fresh food, or you just want a whole snack wall, we're going to work with that behind the scenes and spit out an image that I think the three of us can confidently say is pretty remarkable. And at least for you to present that, that's the big first step. That's the second thing that is pulling the trigger on doing it. Because it's a whole new part of the business that you haven't gone into beforehand. And like the two of you probably also have, I have one customer who dove in last September, did their first micro market, and now they're on track by February to have about 10. So just ramping it up and getting over that first hurdle of yes, it's a change in the way you're doing the business right now, but it's a growth avenue that you can go down and also be successful in.
Yeah, the first one's always the hardest. I can tell you that from every aspect. But once you get that first one, you start rolling. Kylan, what do you think like the things that operators are the most hesitant about when they call you for the first time? Hey, I got to have a market. It's not that, I've always wanted to get into markets, but now I have to have one. What do you think the biggest hesitations are?
I think the big hesitation is people thinking they need to know everything. And I think that's where you kind of need to rely on expertise of, whether it be another company who specializes in it, whatever the case may be. So our whole goal is, once again, to build you guys out, help you guys grow, and, take as many payments as possible. So like I said, not having that fear, I would say the biggest fear is just simply, thinking you need to know everything. You're not going to know everything. People make mistakes or whatever the case may be, but we're here to kind of help you guys navigate and get around those obstacles as they come up. Whether it's identifying a good location, whether it's, making sure there's enough people that warrant, having a market, projections on sales, different things like that. So that's all stuff we can assist with. And, kind of allowing us to, once again, we talk about the mock-ups all day. I mean, just the ability for us to be able to kind of help turn modern day operators into kind of salespeople, being able to kind of go in and walk into a location and have that confidence, knowing that, hey, this is what your break room might look like, or this is what it might look like, but we're able to kind of flip that around and give you something that's unique and something that's going to make you stand out from your other competitors. So I think that's a huge point as well. what are some of the biggest obstacles you think you've seen, Russ, just over the last couple of years?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you hit it well. People thinking they need to know everything. I think obviously everybody's big thing with the micro market is they feel like they're going to get robbed blind. With just, I know we're going to have a specific episode that we're going to dive in later in the season to really talk about, shrinkage and theft and things like that and how to prevent those. But, that has been minimized by technology so much, technologies that we provide, some other ones that we can mention and we will dive into there. But, we've really focused so far on talking about people for their first market. I think one of the coolest things that I've seen is taking an operator that's got 20, 25, 30 markets, and how do we change the way they think about micro markets? You said salespeople, turning these guys into salespeople. They think they've got to go out and find a new locations that they can put a market into. When in fact, because of the way micro market technologies have changed, it's, hey, go find your best vending account. You got 5, 6 vending machines there. You got a food machine, 2 drink machines, 3 snack machines. Great. That's probably an awesome place to put them in, not even a mini, but a small micro market. And there's a good chance that you're going to, double or more your sales. So I think changing people's mindsets of where they can put a micro market. And I know we'll dive into that later in the season, but I think that's my favorite thing is, let's take a look at your numbers and, operators that we do have on Seed Pro, we can see that for them and we can say, hey, this is a really good location that you've already got. Now we're just going to get a rendering. You're going to walk in and say, hey, we want to take you to a micro market. And it's a pretty easy sell. And I've seen quite a few operators do that. And of course we have our cooler cafes and stuff, and you can do mini markets as they call them. Used to, you had to have 150, 200 plus people to have a micro market and make it worth the while. Now, I mean, I've got guys that are running a cooler cafe with 25 people. So I think that's been one of the coolest innovations that I've seen is really putting micro markets in unique spaces, swapping them out for vending accounts, which also allows operators to clean up, make less stops, get rid of some of your, I hate to say it, dog vending accounts that just don't make a lot of money. There's some accounts you're thinking, should I put your credit card reader in there? Is it worth putting a credit card reader on that vending machine? If it's not worth putting a credit card reader on that vending machine, it might not be worth having the account. But now we're taking those, hey, they're decent vending accounts and we're turning them into micro markets, which is just really increasing people's revenues, higher profit margins, and everybody kind of wins. So those are some of my favorite things that I've done so far with some of my operators that have been market people. But not just, but then there's also the first guys. And, we go back to finding that first micro market for somebody. We said that a lot of times they're pigeonholed into, hey, this location has to have a micro market. I've also got guys that are like, I want to get into markets, but I don't know where to start. It's the exact same situation. Let's go find your best vending account and then take that best vending account. Let's present them a market and we go from there. But I think that, we will continue to say it all season long, probably with the modeling, the mock-ups, residential, gyms, things like that, but really getting into where's a really unique place that you can put a market and make it make sense for the operators.
It's really about just taking the market and bringing it to the people no matter where they're at. And I think that's the most important thing is just making sure that we're able to service people no matter where they're at. And I'm excited for some of the episodes we have coming up, talking about gyms and just different things like that. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons that we're kind of doing this podcast, I think, is to kind of, be able to spread our knowledge, spread exactly what it is, answer some big questions that all operators are having, but also at the same place, have it in a safe spot where people can easily access it. I think our whole goal here is to kind of let people know, let everyone know where the shift is going. We're returning to the conversation of retail, and like I said, just have a safe spot for operators to ask questions, even in the comments below, and just different things like that. Because like I said, we truly are starting to see a shift, and I think that there's a lot of revenue left on the table for a lot of operators.
Absolutely. And, the podcast is called Retail, and I've been saying this since I first got to Cantaloupe that, we're in the vending industry, right? Well, not really. And now we're just in the unattended retail space where vending and convenience is being bridged really well. We'll get into it with our residential markets, but they're basically being set up as miniature convenience stores in the bottom of high-end, luxury condos and apartment buildings, and just bridging that unattended retail gap and not thinking I've got to sell chips and candy bars. Now I can sell sandwiches, I can sell salads, but also, as a gym, I can sell whey protein. I can sell these higher ticket items that are going to help increase my revenues and just getting creative. And I think that's where it's fun for us to be able to change up what people are selling. And because we all talk to, 300 plus operators, being able to help share that knowledge. Hey, I've got an operator in Northern California that's doing X. Max has got an operator in Pittsburgh that's doing X. And we get to take those little nuggets from around the country of all the different operators we talk to and get to share it on this podcast, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about micro markets, and it's been this way for a long time, is that they're just expensive. It costs too much money. There's too big of a capital expenditure up front. Where now the technology has gotten the overall cost of the market down tremendously compared to what it was even 2, 3, 5 years ago. But the other thing is obviously we do work for Cantaloupe, and Cantaloupe making it more accessible for operators, whether that be with financial payment terms or that be with actual implementation and helping people on site put together that first market, which takes away a lot of that risk and the fear that people have, is really just making it more accessible from a financial standpoint, from a labor standpoint. I think that's going to be one thing that we get to really highlight and talk about over this season is that you can do a market now. It's not some $30,000-$40,000 investment that you got to make. We can make it cost effective, and we can make it make sense for you as an operator. And I think that's just going to be really fun to dive into as we move along throughout the season.
Absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback off that, just the thought of, you deal with a lot of operators, the stress of getting their first market. Okay, now they have their first market. Now what do? They are left with a bunch of pieces. They don't really know what they're doing. The fact that we have a CSM team who's, their sole job is to help you guys out, knowing that it's your first ever market. It might be your second or your third. You always have people to rely on to assist you guys, whether it's, scanning products in, different things like that, just to let you guys know that you guys will be kind of, we want to make sure that we walk before we run. And the fact that you have the resources through Cantaloupe to do A through Z, I think that's kind of one of the biggest talking points and what this podcast is going to show operators. So super excited for the season. I think there's a lot of good talking points that, we're going to get to bring up regarding the market transition, just going from your first market to maybe your 10th, like Max talked about with his operator, or even to some of the larger operators we've discussed that have hundreds of markets. It's going to just change the space in which how people view markets and how there's an upward trajectory and where it's going to end up for people.
And also, as technology continues to increase, we'll dive into it later in the season, but we've got, of course, our cooler cafes, but now we've got our smart cafe coming in 2024. The technology is just going to get better, faster. I think that the smart cafe is going to be the biggest technology enhancement to the vending or unattended retail space since the credit card reader itself. I think we kind of said it earlier, we're in the vending industry, but really we're in the unattended retail space. And now markets are becoming cheaper than vending machines are. And so, vending machines have a lot more mechanical issues and there's a cost of upkeep. And it's getting more affordable, not only to place a market, but to also service a market. You're not worried about your glass front beverage machine getting, 9 service calls a week across the board there. So I think just the actual cost of things, not just the hard cost, but also the cost of servicing, maintaining, and running a market is just going to come out throughout this season. And it's going to open a lot of eyes, hopefully a lot of you listeners at home.
One of the things that just kind of hit me over the head, I know it's kind of random to bring up, but just the technology aspect, as you mentioned, and I just can't fathom the idea of, operators having vending machines out there, let's say a cold drink machine or different things like that, and they're unplugged and not knowing when stuff has power. And the fact that we have the technology to kind of notify operators of, hey, this has been out of touch for a couple hours. Hey, this item right here, this cooler's went down a couple degrees. I mean, I think all of that technology just kind of lets an operator know that, not only do they have more information at their fingertips, but that allows them to make more decisions regarding their business, regarding in terms of how they're going to operate, spoilage, all those different things that are key when going into markets. So I think that's going to be kind of a big talking point moving forward.
I just want to say thank you to all of our listeners, viewers, operators. Thanks again for joining us on this first episode of Retail on the Go. Before we sign off, be sure to follow or subscribe to our podcast on wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever that may be. And also follow us on Instagram at Retail. And don't forget to stay tuned for our next episode on micro markets and why they're becoming so much more popular among all of our different operators. Until then, we'll see you next time. This is Retail on the Go, signing off.